Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about Zoma from the Dragon Quest Tact collaboration, and he's a very aesthetically interesting looking unit for War of the Visions. So we're going to talk about his kit and his firepower, which is quite a bit, but there are some glaring weaknesses as well that we have to discuss to see whether or not he'd actually be worth pulling for your account. Okay, so let's start off this Zoma video with an AI test, and we can see he is very much in range of enemies here. So when I go to auto, he is going to go grab the treasure chest, and he's going to pop off his LB. So what we need to know is when he doesn't have enemies in range, what sort of buffs is he going to use, and what order is he going to use them in. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and wait with the slime, put Zoma on auto, and he moves up and he's using his HP barrier up and brave down skill. So now at this point, he should be able to go into range of an enemy, but we'll see if I move him to the back, what type of skill he's going to use instead. So we'll get out of the range here, go back onto auto, and there is his TMR. So he's used his team buff. All right, here's another scenario. We've still got main job, sub job, no devout yet, but we have some units in desperate need of healing and we have no enemies in range. So let's see. There is our instant cast single target heal from Zoma. So he will use that over buffing people. Nobody had any buffs yet. So now we're going to see there'll be chances to do some buffs, possibly some chances to do some damage, but it seems like healing will take the precedence, then your team buffs, which is the HP buff first, followed by your TMR buff that he had, and then finally his solo buff that he can only use on himself. That's the last priority, which is what you would expect. Okay, so we've reloaded the game, and now we are sub-devout, and we'll see what Zoma decides to do for his first buff. He's still going to use his HP barrier and brave down skill. So we'll have to see what he decides to do after that. Okay, so we've got our second turn of buffing, and he's casting this time. So this is going to be one of the devout buffs. It's going to take precedence over his TMR buff. And we'll see, this will be great. Another enemy will die. It'll give us another chance to do another buff. I had to pause the video because I didn't know what he casted there, but it was the teaching of self-preservation. That's the HP up, spirit up. And on JP, there's an added HP percent up as well. So we'll go back to Zoma again, and so we'll see where does he start to cast some more skills. He's casting again, and likely this is going to be self-preservation again because we have these stupid NPCs in the fight with us. But we'll see, this is a skill that can get people stuck on devout pretty easily, and a lot of times the right thing to do is to turn it off. But basically what we're seeing here is that Zoma is going to use before all else. Oh, there we go. That's the ice boost skill. So that's good. So he kind of rifles through his different support skills. He's going to be casting it on everyone. If he had someone to attack, he would. But because he doesn't, he's using all of these different devout skills. And of course, we've already tested if he would heal. But the good news is that his barrier is always a priority. Devout skills do take precedence over the TMR skills. TMR seems to be one of the lower priorities for him, but hopefully that's enough of a test. I assume that if we went green mage, we would see very similar results. So usually I start every video by talking about who this unit's going to be strong against and who they're going to be weak against. And it's kind of difficult to say for Zoma. There is definitely a type. He's got a very interesting effect. It's similar to the Golbez effect where for the first 3 turns of a battle, he gets 15% to all attack type resistances, and his TMR gives a further 15% to pierce, strike, and missile resistance for himself and an ally. So you can effectively think of him having a 30% resistance to pierce, strike, and missile at the start of a fight. And that's pretty strong as long as you don't get dispelled / wait a few more turns before that effect wears off. But what I think about when I think about his application in our meta is that he's going to be really good on a short map against physical attackers, preferably those without barrier breaks, and those that really depend on AP, because Zoma has an ability that's a large AoE, it's got a pretty good height range, it's got a big diamond AoE, and it not only inflicts frostbite on people. It also just breaks 25 AP right off the top as well. So no matter what, you're stripping AP away from people and you're dealing, it's got a 220 mod. So it's going to be a pretty powerful attack. So as long as these other units don't have a good magic resistance, then he's going to be in good shape. He's also going to be good against a unit like Halloween Lucia, not because he'll take her damage really well, but just because he'll be able to kill her effectively. So if you're running an ice team and you have a tough matchup with Halloween Lucia, then you could think about using him in that matchup as well. He might also be good in a mirror match for ice because he can stack quite a bit of missile resistance, and then he could, potentially take out Snow and the rest of the ice archer girls. But the problem is that he doesn't have any form of courage or re-raise removal, and if you run into those things, you're going to be in trouble. I do want to note that for the units he's going to be weak against, it's definitely going to be anybody with courage, with any sort of mirage or re-raise, and then especially evasion is going to be a problem for him as well. He's got low accuracy and he's got no 100% hit. So when we look at him and we see that his vision card got an accuracy buff, we really hope that it's going to be significant, because otherwise you're going to have to spend a lot of time building him to be accurate, when really what we want to do is spend time building him to be bulky. All right, on to the pros for Zoma. So he's going to be a pretty powerful unit. Now, there is a caveat to that, but first of all, the positives, okay? So he has a very high magic stat. He has a 38% magic resist imperil on his limit burst that can't be reflexed because it has 100% counter chance reduction. So basically, if you hit with this, you're going to just really rock their magic resistance, deal a bunch of damage. The big demerit to that is that it's one fight only, and that he doesn't have any magic resist penetration on his kit at all. But he can dispel shell and haste with a single attack. He also has a 30 spirit break on a non-elemental attack. So for example, in the recent limited guild battle, I was taking on ice teams by building up a lot of ice resistance. I was also taking on dark teams by building up a lot of dark resistance. And something that really I didn't count for was Halloween Lucia having that extra arcane shot that is non-elemental, non-typed. And that was really rocking my units with all this dark resist that I had built. And so these non-elemental attacks are not something to look at lightly. They are very powerful attacks. He's got huge mods on his skills, so he is going to be a high damage dealer. The biggest thing is that if he runs into a magic tank, there will be more of a problem than some of these other units that can penetrate a lot more. So he's really looking to go against units with lower spirit and lower magic resistance. Next up, we have survivability, which is Zoma's call to fame, I guess, because he's got these decent starting /missile and magic resistances, and he has that Golbez style 15% attack resistance for 3 turns on passive. So this is where I really wanted to see a global upgrade for Zoma, because we already learned from Golbez that the 3 turns on that passive is just too short, because when you take your first turn, that's already one of the turns. So now you have to move to buff your team, or maybe you move forward or whatever it is, and then you take a second turn and you're still approaching. You might have 1 to 2 turns that you actually have this buff active. It's probably not going to be worth it, and you're probably going to use some of his other passives because of this, and it sucks because it's a really cool concept that is just done very poorly. But the one thing that it does have that we've been seeing a lot of lately, we saw it on Warrior of Light, is the self-heal below 50%. So this is not below 20% because he doesn't have courage. He's not going to, it's hard to get to that low level and survive. So this is a really interesting heal as well, because it's a small potency heal based on magic, which means that it can heal for a lot if he has a very high magic stat, which he does. He also has a 35% physical barrier, which is a 3 hit, and then an HP boost and a TP skill. The HP boost is for himself and for everybody, which is very good. He can even absorb 30% of damage dealt on his non-elemental single target attack, which is very, very powerful. So if you can get him some high HP, some decent resistances, and make him bulky, then there's a chance that he can attack people, heal himself. He goes below 50%, he gets that 1 heal back up. And then maybe he's able to survive long enough to really wreak some havoc with an alternate damage type, which we're seeing with Halloween Lucia is really, really effective. So this is something for Ice that really fills a spot on their team. I'm just not buying that he's going to be as effective as Halloween Lucia. One other note for his survivability is that Zoma, his race is ? So he's not a human. So Human Killer does not do anything against him. Another place where Zoma is quite interesting is the sheer amount of utility that he has on his kit. So he has a 30% counter, chance to counter with a Dispel. It's 5 square range. I think this should have been preemptive. I think that would have been a really cool global upgrade, but they thought he was fine. He's got multiple heals available. He's got a heal on his sub job, but he's also got healing on his Devout sub job as well. This is Ice's first Devout sub job, and we know that it's really powerful from a few units, including Darkfina, Sadali, etc. So you know that there's a way, if you want to build him more support, you can turn off certain skills, and then maybe he'll use those skills, and that will be really great. But overall, he's going to be like an attacker first, but maybe there's some utility there that you can build in. Green Mage as well got that buff. So Vitalize is a 40% agility buff in JP, which is a really, really big buff for agility. And then there's also his large AoE that's going to inflict Frostbite and break AP. We already talked about that. And there's even more. So he can inflict slow on a 3-hit AoE, so there's some chaining potential there too. He can inflict sleep with his magic ice breath. He can move decrease and immobilize on a sub job. So if you use that sub job, then you're going to be able to hit this big 9-square AoE and immobilize everyone, make it so they can't close you down as quickly, although if you're using this skill, you're already pretty close to them. And you also still have a heal in that sub job. And then finally, his ability that gives himself the barrier and it gives HP to himself and to other people. It also gives Brave down to allies. So Brave on hit down to allies. So what this means is when your allies hit your opponents, they're going to lower your opponent's Brave. And when you lower your opponent's Brave score, it is going to lower their damage, their physical damage, and it's going to also lower their reaction ability chance for physical reaction abilities. So that is actually pretty impactful. If you have everyone buddy up with Zoma and you end up getting this buff on your whole team, you're attacking a physical team, it means they're going to reflex less, they're going to preemptive counter less, whatever it is, and they'll deal a little bit less damage to you. All right, we've made it to the cons section, but before that, I have a quick request for all of you watching this video, and that is to quickly hit the like button on the video. It helps with the engagement for me, and I really appreciate the support for the channel. Okay, so the cons. There are a few cons. For Zoma, I think the auto 3-turn buff is too short for his attack type resistances. He's also missing magic attack penetration entirely. I know he has an Imperil, but he can only use that in one fight and then it's gone. So second fights and guild battles are going to be tougher for him. He also has cast times on his sub jobs, and he has 2 main job skills that have cast times as well, and he doesn't have any innate cast time reduction. He does have cast time reduction on his Devout sub job, but there's a lot of work in getting that online and making it reliable, and so cast times really are a relic of the past. They're very difficult to use, and the fact that he has no reduction, that's a really big deal. He also has a 20% accuracy buff on his main job, but his accuracy overall is very low, so this is kind of a problem, and there's no 100% hits on his kit. And if we do see some evasion coming into the meta, this will definitely be a problem for him. So I've compared Zoma to Halloween Lucia and Darkfina as 2 of our premier mages that we have in the game right now. And you can see that he is a little bit bulkier in terms of HP than both of those units, and he's going to get an HP buff as well. His resistances are similar to them, and none of them are really popping off resistance-wise. The big thing here with Zoma is that he gets some of the bulkiness that Lucia has, but then you look at his magic stat and it's quite high as well, and he still gets a decent amount of agility. So they have pushed him in some ways. I just don't buy that his survivability is going to be as good as Halloween Lucia's, and that his damage will be as solid as Darkfina's, and that's because of the lack of penetration. So I think that he kind of goes into the middle ground between these 2 units, and he's not doing what both of them do nearly as well as they do. The thing that he does bring to the table is a pretty insane array of utility in terms of status effects that he can apply to your opponents. So I just have some closing thoughts for this review. His TMR is pretty interesting. It's got 2 uses. It gives himself and one other ally 15% pure strike and missile resistance. This is a really good buff because it doesn't need you to be right next to them, so you can kind of tailor your AI with it as well. He's also ice elements only and first Devout sub job, which is pretty useful for certain things. And also there's going to be a raid ribbon that you can farm for that will have 5% human resistance on it. So that's going to be good for Zoma in terms of giving him a kind of unmitigated navigatable resistance towards a lot of the other units in the game, and that's kind of cool to see that. I'm going to do a full review on his vision card in a separate video, but I do think that it is very, very solid for him, and that the global buff will probably be important for him as well. So you're likely going to want to get that if you're pulling for him, but I don't necessarily think anyone should be pulling for him. All right, so we made it to the end, and we have to decide, should you pull for Zoma? And I think that Zoma's definitely better than Golbez. You know, his 50% HP recovery skill is the biggest reason why, and the Devout sub job is a really nice get for Ice. But unfortunately, I can't recommend Zoma to any players at all, even Ice players. Part of this is that there's the Dream upgrades, there's going to be level 140. Zoma is almost certainly never getting this, or just it will be forever. And the kind of, we can look at Persona hasn't come back in JP. We can look at Nier hasn't come back in JP. So we really don't know, like, with these types of collaborations, when they're going to come back. We have no idea of when these non-FF collabs. Like, the one exception is in Global with the Tomb Raider Laura collab that did come back, but that's very specific. So I don't think that these units are going to be a super safe investment, although I think they can put in work at the time. Now with Zoma, I think that he's still like kind of like a unproven concept of that he's not going to be bulky enough to really make a difference. He's not going to be Halloween Lucia. I think that he adds a ton of new stuff to Ice right now, but I still don't think it's worth it for people to spend their Vizzy, or I think you should probably just save for the feature banners for the, you know, the anniversary, because it's so tough, because I love units like this and there's so many cool things about him, but the fact that his accuracy is so low, there's no 100% hit, the fact that he doesn't have any sort of courage or re-raise, and he can't dispel those himself, he doesn't have a magic penetration, he can't break magic barriers, although he does have a 3-hit attack that effectively deals with the barrier in one turn. I just don't see him being good enough for Global, and I don't think that people should be pulling for him. But now I'm very curious what you think. If you actually like Zoma, maybe you're going to be pulling for Zoma, or maybe you agree with me and you think that these units are all skips. Now, of course, I say that, but I will be pulling for Sorrow on Wednesday. He's a fire unit, and I'm going hard into fire. That doesn't mean that I'm recommending him to anybody else. I don't want anyone to be confused about that, but I do think that he's a pretty cool unit for fire, so I'm very excited for that. As for Zoma, I have him on JP. I can just enjoy him there, and I don't have to worry about him on Global. So that's going to be it from me. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all in the next video.